I feel very obligated to take care of people's money. You can either work with me or you can say we're done, and that's fine. I'm addicted to always learning something new. If you can just focus and go deep, you can accomplish a lot.
Welcome back, investor. We've got Passive Income Adventures. I've got my partner with me today, Stephanie Harris. This is my first time doing a side-by-side, like in-person interview. Stephanie lives in Idaho and we own a property together here in Pocatello. So I was up checking on the property and I said, we should do this interview, see if we can figure out how to do this in person side-by-side. So for those of you listening to the audio,
Here we are.
But for those of you on the video, we're trying to figure it out. I'm wondering if this conversation is going to be a little bit different when you're like face to face with somebody instead of online. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it'll be interesting to see how this works out.
I've heard your story before because when we first met, you reached out to me after, did you hear me on a podcast?
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Bigger Pockets podcast.
Oh,
And we had a lot in common.
yes.
And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to talk to her.
Okay, so this is a really good example of the purpose of the podcast because now we own an apartment building together. So
Good timing.
it took a little while after we first met. So let's back into that story. When we very first met, we went out to dinner. You met my husband, we chit-chatted, and then nothing really happened for a few years. We check in with each other every so often, but then you checked in with me probably just randomly. Hey, I really want to get into commercial. I've been thinking about it more and more. If you have a project in the area, let me know. I was like, actually, we've got one under contract right now. So take us up to the point where you got to that point where you called me like, I really have been thinking about this and this is what I want to do. What were you doing before that? And what kind of led you up to that point?
Okay, so when I first started in real estate, I would say that I knew that there was something about real estate and that it would be something that I'd be interested in. But like Emma, I have kids and I homeschooled those kids. And really, my priority during those early years of my life were focused on them. And I did a few extra things, but not too much. I really wanted to be able to be home. And then in 2016, just on a fluke, I was looking through auction.com and there was a property that popped up in my town. And we lived in a tiny little town. And again, 2016 prices. So it's going to be like $30,000. And I'm like, and I just thought, do it.
Yeah.
Just go for it. And I made some calls to people I knew had a little bit of money. And I guess I sold them on the idea. I'm like, I know we can do this. Backing up just a little bit, one of the first houses that my husband and I and our kids lived in was definitely a fixer-upper house.
Yeah.
And
Fixer-upper house.
blasted basement walls so that we could water seal it. We pulled wires, we did framing, we took down old lath and plaster, we redid plumbing. So by that time, I wasn't afraid of anything. And so I bought this house on auction. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, I mean, I figured out what I'm supposed to be doing. So at that point, I just dug into podcasts and books and tried to learn everything, what this real estate investing might actually look like. And up to that point, I had probably thought mostly, oh, you buy a house and you put a renter in it. Now I know, there's 100 different ways to figure out how you want to be an investor in real estate. But we did that home, and in doing the research to learn about it, I realized I'm in an interesting window here where I can buy homes. I can get renters in them at the 1%. The rates were pretty low. And I just thought, I need to just go at this full bore. Full bore was still only 6, 7 houses, but I found enough money. We went and got conventional mortgages and everything and got our people in and thought, oh, I'm so good. But then it's kind of like, okay, so what's next? I do love the business part of it and the long-term benefits of investing in real estate, but I also really love rehabbing the houses.
Okay.
I love that process. I love thinking through the process. I love taking something that was living way under its value and bringing it up to something that the community would be proud of and that somebody could feel like they were living in a nice home.
In some ways, that's my favorite part of it as well, just adding value. And you feel like you want to save all the houses.
Yes.
Maybe like an old one. And you're like, oh, I'm sure the numbers wouldn't work, but I would love to save the house. But I think the thing that I noticed about you early on when you bought into the apartment complex with it, so for the listener, we structured it as a joint venture where we had 4 people who are bringing in large chunks of cash. And then the person who found the deal, and then Stephanie and I partnered on the same LLC to come in. So you brought in a little money, I brought in a little money, and I was like, okay, this LLC is in charge of running it. But right from the get-go, I was seeing your ability to work with the numbers in the spreadsheets was really good and you had the ability to force yourself to do that kind of stuff that even if you didn't like it or even if you didn't want to, you were local to the project. So you were able to come out here like once a week and just keep the contractors in line and make sure things were happening the way they were supposed to. But you were also pretty organized with paperwork in general. And not very many people want to do that. So they think about, I'm going to be Joanna Gaines and I'm going to go pick out finishes at Home Depot and or at the design shop or whatever. But you knew at that point already you'd owned enough homes and flipped enough homes that you were like, no, this is a finance business.
Somebody still needs to do the boring stuff.
Yeah.
And hi, mom. My mom, growing up, she was a stickler. Like we balanced our checkbooks to the penny. We didn't say, oh, we're just only up $2. She'd be like, oh, no, you sit there and you find those $2. And she is one of my finance partners. And so I just knew like I had to take care of the business. I had to keep my spreadsheets. I had to know where the money was coming from. I had to plan out the exit strategies. We needed to know the percentages. And even though that's not my favorite part because of my mom, and when I was in school, I studied accounting and business. I do know how to do that. And I make myself, sit down and take care of that so that ultimately the project's taken care of.
So you started raising money for your very first deal. How did that change the way that you have your own money in a deal? And for whatever reason, you feel like, if I lose it, at least I learned. But when you have somebody else's money in there, how did that change? Like okay, let me back up with that question. Have you since done your own money only in a deal until you can like know the difference when it's yours versus investors?
I have the perfect example of that right now. I bought a house it's been almost a year, and it needed a lot of work and I wanted to do it really well. And so I was willing to be patient with that process. But I had 5 other deals come up that we had to bring on hard money lenders. Those have been taken care of first. My own project is still sitting there.
Yeah.
And it'll get finished up here in the next few months. But yeah, you sideline some of your own stuff because you feel obligated to take care of other people's money. At least I do. I feel very obligated to take care of people's money.
Hopefully everybody feels that way.
Hopefully.
I think that's the more common. Like most people feel more pressure when they have other people's money in the deal. Would you do it differently? If you're looking back on that, it's $30,000 and maybe $30,000 in rehab. Would you have been like, for my first one, should have tried to scrape it up, gotten a line of credit, something it's on my own? Or are you glad that you learned how to raise money so early on?
No, I think that raising money, even if you're still just doing one house, one project at a time, it's what's going to help you to get to the point where you can do this to scale for money, for wealth, for financial difference that really makes a difference in your life, and where you start to understand the numbers, you understand the terminology in real estate investing, and then you can become a passive investor. Plus, bringing your skills of being able to consult, offer suggestions, help the next person who's willing to spend those first few years hustling and grinding and showing up with the demo crew and the hammer and helping them through that process. But you're a passive investor because you now understand the money.
Yeah, that's the direction that I started going. And I think the partnership with you is where I really came into that realization that the project that I did right before that apartment building is with a different group. We had a partner in there who was extremely well organized. He's PMP for a commercial construction company. And I remember calling him one day and just being like, I'm really struggling. We show up to these weekly meetings. I feel like I don't have my stuff together. I forgot what I got assigned last week and I didn't get done. It's embarrassing. It's not professional and it's holding back the group and the project. I said, but you are always on the ball. Can we just talk through this to do? And he immediately was like, oh, set up some systems so that you have this there and you can check this list. And I'll check in with you 2 days before, make sure that if you were having any roadblocks, it was just like a complete 9-day switch. I thought, okay, this is really when you were relying on the strengths of somebody else. And when I saw those tendencies started to come out in this project, I just remember thinking back to that moment when I had a true partner, when he was really just helping me work on what I was best at. And he was happy to do it. I think that was the thing that got me. He was like, no, this is what I could do this. This is where I could really contribute. He was happy to do it. And just realized I'm like, I'm not good at this. And I need to probably be a little bit more passive. And I probably need to be more the person who's putting deals and teams together and then making sure we have really capable, competent people. And with the deal that we did together, that's where I really was like, let's test this out and see how it's going. But that brought a lot of work onto you though. So that moment when like, I think I might like real estate, to realizing like how much work it is. What has that been like for you the last few years?
Okay, so I think that project, backing up, we flipped a few homes and that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of stress. And okay, with real estate, there's so many different aspects and you start to fill things in, but you're always going to go through a learning curve on what you're doing. Finding good contractors who you know how to communicate with and you have a good trust level. That's fun. And those first few
But
flips,
you never actually find your ideal contractor, right? And you know what you like and you don't like, but you never actually find that perfect contractor. So I feel like with contractors, it's more of learning to live with their weaknesses
uh-huh.
and just making do with what their strengths are. And that's a tough.
One of my contractors that I hired on a really nice flip, like a house that we weren't just going to go in and just make the floors and do new paint, but we redid the whole thing and it was a home worthy of a good finish. This guy showed up. He said, "Oh, yeah, we can have this worked out in 4 weeks and it'll cost you $10,000." And I was too naive to realize, oh, no, that's not going to work out. And he showed up for the first couple of days and did some things. And so then I gave him his third down that he wanted.
Closet.
Yeah, and then I saw some of his people come again, but I think he just picked him up off the street, off the drug corner, and then I never saw him again. So, anyway, I do now have some good contractors where, just like you said, I know what they can bring, I know what their weaknesses are, I know what their strengths are, and we know how to work together.
Yeah.
So, that's an aspect that if you choose to go into some sort of active real estate, you're going to want to know how to work with contractors and figure that out and how to work out the money and the payment schedules. And
Yes, payment schedules. That's the biggest one. How do you handle the deposits? Because I know when I first started, they wanted 50% up front. And I knew that there was a chance they could just abscond with the 50%. And when we did the same thing in our house, it was a total remodel, blew out the back wall. It was basically the only thing that we left was the foundation and the roof. And when we added onto it, like half the foundation was even new. We jacked into the floors, moved all the plumbing. We completely pulled all the wiring and redid it all. It was aluminum wiring. So we completely redid the whole house. And so learning how to deal with contractors on our own, where we were there doing the work with our own hands, but we had subs who would come in. That was really useful an experience later down the line, but they still had to go through a few times of getting burned. But so I knew I'm like, I'm not going to pay this guy 50% up front, but I'm like, can you do the demo for free? And as soon as that's done, I'll pay you. And there are people like, no, I can put you down. So there's a risk there for them doing work that I'm never going to pay them for because they get stiffed on money all the time. So how have you found the best balance for that? How much do you pay up front? And how do you work that payment schedule? This is super nitty gritty, but this is something people don't talk about.
Very valuable. So I do now have contractors that I trust and they've always come back and fixed anything that I haven't been happy with. And that's fine. But if I bring on new people, one of the things I do is I pay for materials or I have some accounts where they can go and get the materials because I understand, especially they don't want to be out their material costs.
Yes.
But then we decide an amount to be paid for 2 or 3 days worth of work. And then I pay them. And then we do the next phase and then the next phase. And then over time, you learn, okay, I know what this person can do. I also really appreciate and I value contractors who've been responsible enough with their money that they don't need paid every couple of days. Like you can get them like an every 2 week sort of thing. You just have to go slow and you have to be nice but firm. I know somebody one time I had a guy that took off with some money. It's even just been 6 months ago. And one of the responses I got was, "Oh, they saw you coming from a mile away. You're just way too nice." And you know what? I probably do err on that side a little bit, but I learned that I can still be kind, but I can still be like, no, this is absolutely the policy and I will not bend. You can either work with me or you can say we're done and that's fine. But this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And people who take money, if they're only being paid a couple days out, it's not leaving you with a job that's half paid for, but only 10% done. So I try and keep the work really in line with the payment schedule up front. I like what you said, you pay them every couple of days, maybe twice a week, get it every 2 weeks. And I do like the ones who are responsible enough to recognize that. And I just tell them up front, I will never let the payments get so far out of scope with the work that's being done where you're either doing more or paid way more. I'm going to try and keep this in lockstep as much as possible for these first couple. And if this goes well, renegotiate. But the first ones, I pay them very frequently and never let it get too out of sync.
But just like back to the original question, when you finally find those contractors that you can work with, that can manage, that you only have to show up maybe like once a week and help get payments done, That really gives you the opportunity then to manage your project, to really look at what the numbers are, to think what the highest ROI is on maybe value add projects, and just looking out, managing the management, looking at your marketing, looking at your market, where the prices need to be, what level of finishes you need for what the property can actually demand for rent. So there's just a lot of things. There's a lot of moving pieces, and you can, just like you said, you can find partners who love one aspect of it, and they can do that, and that's great. And I think you still need to check in with them. Everybody needs to be responsible to one another, have meetings and see what everybody's thinking and how they're performing, what their assignments are. And then you can do the things that you love the most and the things that you're the best at. You're fantastic at fundraising and just keeping things going and creating big vision. And so that comes in super valuable to people.
Do you ever feel like the thing that somebody says, "Oh, you're good at this or you're good at that," you feel like that's the least valuable skill?
Oh,
If you're good at it, and I don't want to say it's easy because raising money is very hard, but that's something that you can really pour yourself into, and it comes more naturally to you. Maybe. You feel, oh,
so you don't value it as much because
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. What do you think that is with you? What do you ever feel like that? Oh, I'm contributing this, but that's the least valuable skill in this whole deal.
So for most of my partnerships and even my individual things, I've done the whole thing.
Okay.
And I actually enjoy the whole thing. I really enjoy just the whole puzzle of how can I put this together? How can I make this the very best asset for my family's long term and for my community and for the person that's eventually going to live there? So I do really enjoy that. I have a bookkeeper in some of my partnerships, which I really do appreciate because that's really not my favorite. In fact, it's always funny because you say I'm so organized. I'm going to tell you that in some of my partnerships, I'm not allowed to have keys because I'm always like, oh, dang, I know they gave me the keys, but
Where did they go?
I think I put them here. And then I'm like, I'm going to get those little tabbies on them and write the name. And then I'm like, oh, always remember this one. And it just doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Super granular micro focus is not necessarily my skill. I still kind of like more big vision and I like the scope of the project, but definitely my first thing that I would give to somebody else is the paperwork, the granular.
Like the admin, back office stuff. And I find that in joint ventures, that's really common because in joint ventures, you're dealing with an entire group of more visionaries. Who wants to go put $250,000 into one property with 5 people that they've just met? Because sometimes joint ventures, you're doing it with different people because you got this money working here and then you got to go find somebody else new to go put their money in over here. And so I feel like in groups like that, everybody's a big picture thinker and it's really tough to find someone who is that granular. And oftentimes the project can't afford to hire so that
Exactly. And that's where I feel like, again, hi, mom, the discipline that she helped me learn, even though I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's like doing the dishes, doing the laundry. I don't love it, but I know it has to be done.
Yeah.
I know you can pour a lot of work into a beautiful, amazing project. And if somebody didn't take care of the paperwork, you're going to fail.
Yeah. Passion tech right there. You will fail big if you can't handle paperwork.
When you need to go refinance out of your hard money loan and your paperwork's all over the place and you can't get yourself ready to get the loan, you're going to have extension fees. You're going to have penalty interest. And then the other people don't want to look at you because they're like, why can't you perform? Like, why do we want to give you a loan? You're already in default.
And eventually, someday, you're going to get audited. So you need to be ready for that. At least 3 years worth of stuff, very organized with itineraries of what you spent on that money. That Sizzler bill that we got back in the day, that like goes on in my taxes as a business meeting. And I need to like take good notes on this stuff. So just being more organized and keeping the paperwork really right. And I think this is sometimes what active investors or wannabe potential active investors sometimes don't understand how much of a business this is and how much on your own. And it's not, I'd make jokes. It's not like teaching piano lessons to the neighbor kid. Sometimes they miss a payment because you don't have good tracking, but you just love the kids.
Right.
Your partner is working, so there's just a little extra fun money. That is not what this is. These are lots of zeros that you're employing a lot of people from the contractors, their subs, like you've got people's money on the line. You can't be running this willy-nilly. You got to commit.
And I think you just have to put in place your systems. And I think once you take the time to do the systems, that just helps you out because when I get this, I take a picture, or when I get this, I put it over here in this file. And you just discipline yourself to do that so that you're, when it comes time, like January, February, you're like, oh, I should do my 1099s.
Yes.
Oh, I should start getting my taxes prepared for my accountant, that you don't hate yourself and your family and everybody else in the
Or
meantime.
and if you're not good at the paperwork side of things, your accountant will fire you because he might do your taxes this year, but then next year he'll want to deal with you anymore and he will fire you.
I'm not working with that crazy person.
Yeah, it's just too much for them to try and go back and recreate things and
Yeah.
all that. I've heard the horror stories from partners in my who are using for your accountant. Oh, I was using so and so, but he couldn't take me anymore. And I'm like, oh, so you're disorganized. So I love to talk to people about their bookkeeper and their accountant because it tells me a lot about the personality. I need to know somebody more granular than me. It doesn't. You don't have to be a CPA or anything. More granular than me because I recognized early on that I wasn't going after that hard enough in my partnerships. It was whoever said they could raise money because it was all about bringing the money together. Who has the money? Who can raise the money? And then we'd look at each other. Okay, who's watching the baby?
Oh, is that important?
Asset management, paperwork, admin, all of that. And we've come up with various solutions and various partnerships from hiring a bookkeeper, us dividing and conquering, one person saying, I got this. It's different every single partnership, but it's definitely each property is its own little business with different people, different processes, and different. And we can bring in, oh, this system worked in a previous deal, but sometimes you can bring those in and sometimes you can't. Yeah.
There's a book, E-Myth.
Yes.
I read that probably 20 years ago, but those ideas have stuck with me that even if you're a solo entrepreneur or a solo investor, you're still wearing those three hats. And that's the bookkeeper, the CFO, the CEO, as like the visionary person, the one who's always looking out. What are our trends looking to? Where do we need to pivot? And then the person who will operate, the COO.
Yes.
So you need to know where those things are coming from. If you can do all three, that's fine. If you can't, though, you need to get systems in place where you can bring somebody on to help you with that and keep you responsible to those duties.
Whether they're a partner or like an employee or a contractor, it doesn't matter. Somebody has to be in charge of those three, of the nitty gritty of those three roles. I think even CEO, we think, oh, CEO is the visionary, but CEO is making sure everybody else is doing their nitty gritty job. And there's a lot of nitty gritty for them as well. So I think people get, oh, I'm more like a CEO. And I'm like, oh, CEOs are busy, very detail oriented. They've got even more details.
Yes, they do.
They just have people
to take care of everybody doing their stuff.
So tell me a little bit more about what led you up to that point, because now here you are, you flipped a bunch of houses, you have a bunch of rentals, you've got your commercial building. You've owned that since 2021, which is, wow, that's been a long time.
It's time for our refinance.
I seriously need to get on that. Commercial rates are just starting to come back down. And so I'm like, just clap because we've got two properties that we need to do a refi on that. If we had to do it during that rate hike, I think we would have been one of those statistics because the loan makes such a big difference. In your operations, it doesn't matter how well you execute. If the property cannot even potentially, you're looking at gross potential rent or the gross potential income, if it cannot possibly cover the mortgage payment because the interest rate's gone up so high, then it doesn't matter how well you operate something.
And 2020 is when I heard you on the podcast and I reached out to you. And then it was later on the next year when you said, hey, are you interested in coming in as a partner here? And I'm trying to remember the timeline exactly, but I learned about hard money lending because I just assumed that I'd went out and raised like $150,000. And at the time I was able to get 6 properties with that because we could put 20% down and that worked. And then I just kind of thought, okay, what do I do next? And so just in a little bit of research, I'm like, oh, there's this hard money lending. And then I got a couple and learned the process because again, I didn't have that window where I could just pick up properties all day long and they'd rent at the 1% rule and I could get low mortgage or low interest rates for mortgages. And so I had to be like, okay, if I want to keep doing this, I need to get a little bit more creative. I learned the BRRRR strategy and that's actually worked out pretty well with a few of the different things that we've done. That's buy, rehab, rent, refinance.
How many R's is that? That's a lot of R's.
I think there's 4. So you can pull some money back out of those. I usually don't pull all the money back out.
Yeah.
I'm not super comfortable with being 100% leveraged.
I just want to get 100% of my cash out at 70% owned. And that's pulling a rabbit out of a hat. So if I can't get all my cash out, I will usually do it anyway. But if I can get all my cash out of that first refinance, that's the holy grail of the BRRRR strategy.
And so using that, and that helps us to keep our prices low enough that we can rent them out. And we have ventured into the co-living,
which is illegal in Utah. only 4 unrelated individuals. I think it's a polygamy thing. I don't know, but
I
I think
don't
in some states it's illegal.
yeah, it was like so you have to be careful here too. And so is that a long-term thing? I don't know. We're trying to cross all of our T's, dot all of our I's, make sure that we're doing it okay and not having very many people in it. Like we're not trying to maximize the 7
Yeah.
to 8
Yeah.
kind of thing, but there's a shortage of good low cost rentals. And here in a college town,
Yeah.
people need stuff and
Maybe you can get a 3-bedroom, 3-2, and then somebody in the master bedroom is paying a little bit more, and then you rent out the other 2.
right.
Like that's totally above
Exactly.
board, and there's enough parking
Yes.
for that
Right. You're
situation.
not making the neighbors crazy and
Exactly.
yeah, so we've used a little bit of that strategy. I don't wanna get too many because again, kinda like Airbnb, like, you can, like, really double down on a great strategy, but after a couple years, people start not liking it, and then you don't you're gonna have to pivot. I can see it like it's a good thing for right now. What happens, I don't know.
Yeah. Some people, like you said, though, they'll double down on a strategy and they become an expert in the niche. But here's the problem, and maybe where you've done a little bit better is you've done a little bit better job at diversifying what you do actively because you're like, okay, these skills are the same. Like you're doing the same thing for the apartment building that you were
Right.
with the flips. And so even though it is different in a lot of ways, in the ways that count, it's very similar.
Mm.
Diversified a little bit better that way. You haven't really doubled down on the strategy where I buy a cookie cutter every single time. But I do a strategy of really niching down and really becoming an expert and then having your passive investments be a little bit more diversified. But you found a way to say, I'm going to do these active things. I'm going to really specialize in these skill sets. But you can still diversify a little. Like you mentioned, the hard money. Tell me a little bit more about
Okay.
how you're able to do a couple of different things. Because I guess you said you're more of a generalist. You'd like to be more of the project head. So walk me through what that looks like.
I think I'm addicted to always learning something new and then,
Okay.
"Ooh, can I do that? Oh, yeah, you watch me. I'm gonna go do that." Right now, I have 3 kids still at home, and so our life is still very much, "Who has practice?
Mhm.
What thing are we going to this weekend?" Like, I'm
And your
tied to
kids are into a
home.
lot more stuff than my kids are into.
Ye
So you're
yeah.
still doing a lot more activities.
Yeah, so I'm still tied to home, and I still like my kids to work. I like to say, "Reload up in the car, we're gonna go dig out window wells for 3 egress windows we're putting into a house." And so I do appreciate the actual work that the houses
And they're finally getting useful.
afford.
Because it used to be you bring little kids and they're making your job
Uh-huh.
harder. You have to do it all by yourself and they're making it harder. Now
Right.
they're working.
Now I have teenage boys who are like, "Hey, mom, I need 40 bucks." And I'm like, "Oh, well, you need to go over and
I
get
have
this
to look it
done."
up.
And so I do appreciate that. And I have done some flips. At the end of the majority of them, I never felt like the money I made was actually worth all the time. So a lot of times I want to see if I can keep them like in the like the long-term hold. I'm okay with that. But learning the hard money, I just had some people and I think my niche probably with the people who I help them find places for their money are in the agricultural world. It's mostly parents who maybe are in their 60s, 70s, and they're ready to pass the actual active farming on to their kids. But farming margins are 3 to 4%. So you're trying to figure out how I'm going to get my parents a really good retirement and still be able to keep the farm cash flowing. And that was hard. And so a lot of times parents would need such a large amount of money
Mhm.
because they were used to those 3, 4% rates from the production. And again, in agriculture, you can have 3 to 4% rates averaged out over a 10-year period, but there'll be some years where it's,
Negative.
yeah, very negative. And so in just talking to them, I've offered them a solution of we can help you find places where you have title, where you have insurance, and where you have an asset that is valued by everyone, and you can make 10 to 12% pretty much guaranteed all day long with very small default. And if they do default, you have the property, and we make sure that we're picking up the investment opportunities at a rate or an entry point that
Wow.
totally makes sense and keeps them safe. And they've been over the moon.
So you're basically turning your private money partners into private money lenders. So instead of being an equity split partner, profit sharing partner,
Mhm.
they're lending partners. Do you do hard money loans? Do you extend hard money loans to other investors as well?
Yeah, so I'll just say, "Hey, I know of this one thing. Would you be interested in meeting with this person?" And that'll help do like the admin of it, but they're the ones making the agreements and
Okay. Okay. If you had to niche really hard into something, like if somebody asked me this question a few years ago, I'm like niching into capital raising, right? Because That seems to be the impediment on every single deal. Yes, you need somebody who's watching the books and
Mm,
something that granular, all of that. But what I found was the biggest problem was that people just couldn't raise money for it. And I wasn't very good at raising money. And so I thought, if I have to get better at raising money, I should just do that because this is so
mhm,
hard. I don't feel like I have the time to have an active
mhm.
situation. But now that I have partners and we're raising money together, I find myself saying I really want to just specialize in passive income, which is like the whole point of the show. Eventually, we all want to get to that point where we're no longer hustling for the money. We're the hard money lender. We're the ones who are
The
focused on passive
consultants,
income.
the
Yeah.
ones who can help other people learn it and grow into that
Yeah.
position for themselves.
Yeah. Well, what does that look like for you right now? And then maybe in a few
Right.
minutes, we'll get into what it looks like in the future.
So I have a couple other partners who come to me and said, I have money. I want to invest. I don't have the time to
Yeah.
find the deals and make them work. That money is available to me to find things. Dang it, it's hard to find something
Yes.
right now that makes any kind of sense. I'm looking at 20 plus deals once a week and I do it. And I'm like, there's no cash on cash. You may be 5 years before you're getting any return for a lot of these new builds and new construction. We just don't yet have the wages
Yeah.
here to be able to put
Those
them.
higher rents. There's no 1%. I think that rule died. It used to be a 2% rule. I'd never heard 2%, but when I got into this, people have been doing it since like 1995. It used to be a 2% rule. And now you can't find 1%.
No,
Are we
yeah.
going to go with a 0.5% rule eventually? And that's going to be
Right.
good enough? Because the returns have to be better than what you can get in the stock market
Mhm.
to stay in the stock market.
Exactly. Or hard money.
Yeah, true. Because I can make 10, 12% all day long on hard money, which is why I like it so much.
Yeah. So I am looking, if you know of any deals in the Eastern Idaho area, because I do like to manage local, let me know. And we could look at that together. But I would like to have a few more multifamily properties, maybe some commercial here
Okay.
locally.
So we haven't completely burned you on the
Oh,
commercial.
I learned so
Yeah, don't
much.
do that again.
And all the vocabulary too, because there's so much to syndication, all the different ways that you can do it. And so I'm like, Emma, what do I need to know? Tell me. And she gave me books. So I went and Amazon, came in a couple days and just went through those books to try to learn everything. Followed a few people like learning about funds and like all the different ways, all the legal things that you need to do and all the rules and which way you need to do them. And there might come a time where I'm like, okay, let's bite the bullet. Let's get all the legal paperwork in here and let's go and do this on a bigger scale because I really think this is an answer for not just people in ag, but people in small businesses that want to be able to move those assets down to the next generation, but they've got to have a way to fund their own retirement.
Yeah, because a business can barely pay for them. You pass it down to a kid and it still has to pay for them. It's just putting a lot on the shoulders of that business to support that many families. Yeah. Okay. So you still have some gas left in your tank on
Yes.
the active side, is what you're trying to say. How are you looking forward and thinking forward to your own retirement? Because you and your husband are the kind of people who are never going to go sit on a beach in Mexico. But you also have kids who you need to be present. You need to be grandma. Somebody's getting married, and now you need to take 3 months to help plan some
Right.
crazy wedding or whatever. You need to still focus on your family, but you're never going to be the kind of person who just says, I don't want to work anymore either. So walk me through how you're making plans for your own financial retirement, not activity retirement.
Okay. There's one thing that I just heard maybe like a week ago, and it's from one of the guests on the All In podcast. Have you ever listened to that?
I'm like, yeah.
So there's 4 guys, Silicon Valley. They're all like did startups like 20 years ago. They're all very independently wealthy. And they just talk about issues. And one of the guys mentioned this, and I feel like I knew that and I believe that, but just the way he worded it, I'm like, yes. And I'm going to say something here. I know it's probably going to go over well with some of you. And then some of you might be like, oh my gosh.
Those are the best kind of.
But he said in watching Elon Musk and everything that he's done, it's made him want to up his own game. He doesn't want to just put out like a little $1 million app or something. Can I actually develop something that's going to add real value to people's lives? And first of all, I think if I can add one great marriage and 8 great kids to the world, I think that is the very most important thing that I've added to the world. But in that, I also have a desire to look around at my community at where people do business, at what people have to live in, and be like, on my level that I'm comfortable doing, and that I should say comfortable, that I'm willing to push myself and still be able to prioritize my highest priorities What can I do? What value can I bring to my community? And that really was inspiring to me. I have a very active husband, lots of energy. I told him he can't even think about retiring till he's in his 70s.
He'll drive you crazy.
Yes. And I think even when he retires, he'll be like, today's a roping day, tomorrow's a skiing day, the next day we're going to be on the boat, and then we're going to come home and we're going to build fence for 3 days.
Yeah, that's his definition of retirement. Yeah,
Ye-
that's what I mean by financial retirement. There are two different kinds of retirement. One is financial side, and the other is fulfillment. And you spend your time.
Yeah, so I would like to have passive income from the properties. I maybe like not including the multifamily, but I'm at 20-ish doors on my own. And over the next 5-10 years, the projection is that I'll be able to have all the money I want on a monthly basis from those if I manage them well.
Would those be free and clear without partners? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you could continue to do some more with partners or just to
Yeah.
can.
So right now, like last year, I went a little bit overboard. It's definitely more than I wanted. In fact, I was finishing up a project in February and I told my husband, I said, I don't want to do any more for this year. And
In
then,
February.
yeah, and I did
Yeah.
5 more.
Oh yeah.
And
And I'm good with 3 kids. Sure.
yeah,
We love them.
I do want to acquire more. I want to keep going through the process of learning and building. I don't need to do it at a frenzied pace. I need to find the deals that work for me
Yeah.
when the timing's right for me to do them and work on adding value to my community. And then we've got some stocks and other things. And we're going to be able to do what we'd like to do in our life. Do want to go and do lots of things with our kids. Right now, I have a daughter and her husband and their 4 kids are stationed. Well, I say stationed. They're not actually military. They're in something with the military.
Like a civilian or role
In
Egypt. Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
I know.
How did I not know that?
It's just happened over the last few months. They came and they stayed with us for a couple of months while they were waiting for the dates all to. The military
Yeah.
is very poorly ran paperwork wise.
Yes,
And I'm like, you know what? I have 2 boys. I have a senior boy and then a sophomore boy. They're very into their sports. My husband helps coach their football team. My son helps coach on their wrestling. My older son coaches wrestling with them. And we do that. And I'm super happy to do that. My next daughter, my last daughter, she does volleyball. That's her favorite sport. So we'll be there in the fall. And that's fine because my husband's in the potato world. So that's our harvest month. So we'll be home. But then, you know what? She likes her piano. She likes skiing. And I really see ourselves just we're not going to vacation as in laying on the beach. We're going to travel. We're going to go and have experiences. We're going to see which kids we can take, which ones are available to take. We're going to be available to go and live with somebody or take the grandkids for a week when somebody has a new baby.
Or a crisis. I think that to me, my family goes through some really difficult experiences. Both my parents have passed away. And so when their spouses are able to come in and just be grandma and grandpa during the worst experiences of their life, sometimes job losses, death, it just drives home to me that we need to be available to be able to do those things even when they're unplanned.
To show up.
Yeah, because like you said, that is why we do what we do. It's like you take care of home first, and then you take care of your community. And when you have to dial back, you have to take care of home. That's the priority always. And I think that's good for society. Like you said, you're putting a great marriage and good, productive children out into the world. And it's your responsibility to make sure that continues. That's the most important thing.
Right. The grandparenting now is that next phase. And that parenting for the adults is for even as my parents. Am I available when one of them when they need some extra care or something? And definitely having the passive income works there. The other thing with real estate, especially as you find your group, you find your people, there are stupid little emergencies. Hey, it's a negative 10 degrees and my heater's not working. But when you have your people, you know who to call. And when you have your buffer money, it's not a headache. When you're content to see your real estate as a 10-year venture, like we just don't really take any money out for the first 10 years. We just reinvest, we grow, we put aside the money to take care of heaters, to take care of roofs. Then you get to that into that 10 years and you're like, oh, I feel good here. I feel confident. I know who I can call. And if I need to set aside a couple of months to go help somebody through an illness, I don't need to buy another property right now. Like it's going to be okay. One of my very first partners is my sister, and we had bought 2 houses. Our plan was to buy 6. And after our second house purchase, her husband was diagnosed with leukemia. And my other partner said, "Oh, I don't know if we can do this now." And I said, "Oh no, she might need this now more than ever." Her husband has totally recovered and has been in remission, is doing great. But that idea that she was going to need some assets, she was going to need some passive income if she was going to have a husband who was going to pass from leukemia. But that was like a 3-year process of everything he had to go through in the transplant. And we worked through that without her help during those times because we thought she might really need this more than ever.
Yeah. And that's a good point. It's like, it takes time, but you need the cash flow and you need the passive income. Everybody needs that, but nobody really has the time for it. That's not true.
You don't think you do until you're like, no, I need to do this because
Yeah.
my future self needs what this is going to bring.
And I feel like sometimes when something like that happens, a crisis happens, that I don't have time to do it. But then there are times when everything's quiet and I'm just bored, like legit bored. And I'm like, guess I better write a book or buy a new thing or start a business or go mentor somebody. It's if we have the time, we go fill it. And then when the crisis hits, then we have to make decisions.
Right.
When you're filling your time with things you want to do,
Right.
it's different.
And when there's a crisis or there's crunch time, your ability to be productive increases.
I guess it's like we were saying, it's like that fight or flight response and everything is heightened. And that goes back to like your powerful reason why underlying what you're doing. Because if your reason is powerful enough, it almost comes to that same kind of crisis management level of focus, dedication, and willingness to do the work because it's so important to you. And then when it's not important, you find yourself struggling to do things that last year you were killing it and this year you can't do it because this year it's not as important as it was last year.
Exactly. And I think as people venture into real estate, again, they'll find the 100 different ways. And that's probably an exaggeration, but I'm going to say it's not much of an exaggeration of how the strategies can work in real estate. Like, how many people do you get on calls with that have an idea where you're like, oh, that's a new twist on that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, that's a new twist. Oh, new builds. Oh, you're buying businesses in foreign countries. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'm just raising money for people. I'm creating an app to help people keep their paperwork together. There's so many ways you can get into this. But as you get into it and you do a few things and you find where you really want to niche down in, it's that discipline to block out even like 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day. If you can just focus and go deep, you can accomplish a lot.
That's true. And I feel like not many people look at it that way and they're not able to schedule in the time to do the deep work because I struggle with that. I think I struggle with being a combination between fundamentally lazy and just sitting and wasting a lot of time and also that high ambition and that high drive. And so it's very difficult for me to sometimes sit down and plan out the deep work because I'm lazy. But then when I'm lazy too long, I'm like looking at other things other people are accomplishing or things I had accomplished before. Then I start dreaming big and then I go on. So I vacillate between those two extremes that I personally really struggle with. So I think I don't have time, but then I'm like, I really want to go build something.
And sometimes that's where bringing on partners is actually really helpful because, again, you're responsible to someone other than yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you knew there's a deadline coming up this Friday where you said you were going to have all of these projects analyzed in a spreadsheet to send to them.
Yes. Or you're like, hey, Emma, the bank really needs you for some financial statement or they're going to call our loan. They're like, oh, yes, that's right. Get that done. So those kinds of
Hey,
things
everybody, get your paperwork together. A refinance is coming up.
Trust me, we're on it. I also just want to ask about a little bit more on the personal side. You're talking about your financial, you're talking about how you want to spend your time. I don't know if I've ever asked anybody on the show before, but self-care, personal care, because we were talking about this a little bit more, like as women, at a certain age, we really need to start learning how to take care of ourselves because for years we've given everything to somebody else and we feel guilty asking for help with it. And then what we were joking about earlier, it's like suddenly one day you hate everybody and you realize I have to take a step back and make time for my personal and myself. A lot of women tell me for years, I've heard this, I turned 50. I've stopped caring what other people thought about me. Like it was a gradual thing. So what does that look like for self-care now?
I could probably talk for another hour on this topic.
That could be like a whole other podcast. This is an important part of passive income because once you establish your base level of passive income, and even that after you've grown that, so now you can have some play money and some fun money. At a certain point, money stops being so important. And if you don't have the ability to self-care, have your health, introspect, or find fulfillment, passive income is pointless.
Because what's the purpose?
Yeah.
I have a funny story that kind of goes along with that. So I've just always had a pretty high capacity to just take on things and just, if I can help I'm there. I'm happy to do it. And I have a capacity for it, but I probably also burnt myself out a little bit. But it was funny. We were coming home a couple nights ago and it's 10 degrees outside. And I'm in my husband's truck, so it's high. And he pulls up to within 2 feet of the mailbox and he's, hey, grab that. And I was like,
Honey, I'm flattered. Do you think I can fit in that space? But
I'm like, no. And he's, are you serious? Because I don't think I've ever said no before. And I'm like, no, I'm just comfortable right here. My seatbelt's on, and I'm going to have to climb out the window, and I'm going to get my coat all dirty. And no. And he was like, okay.
how are we going to get the mail now?
I don't do that very often, but that was just interesting to be like, no, we can get it later.
But to say no and not feel bad about it.
I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel bad at all.
Every time I say no or say I don't want to help, because I've gotten to the point where I say I don't want to help you or no, I'm not helping you, but I still feel terrible. And then I get angry at the kid or the person because it's like, I said I don't want to help you, but I feel really bad about it. So now I'm going to go into this self-justification defensive mode about
Like,
I should not help you.
Yeah. So like with my kids, I'm still homeschooling the 3 of them and every day. And there are a few times, especially like right now, I'm like in a pretty busy project where I'm like, okay, you guys got to come here right now. I have 20 minutes where we can go through this before I have to leave. But I try to spend at least an hour a day. We read together, we discuss together, we write, and I also do an English class for a bunch of other homeschoolers in my neighborhood every Monday.
Like the co-op.
Yeah. So the book Our Town, I read that a long time ago, but there's this part at the very end, and the girl comes back. She's in spirit form. She's passed on, but she gets to go and kind of look at her day again. And she's, Mama, just look at me. Just look at me. And that just stuck with me so profoundly. And I feel like that's given me that understanding that no matter what we get done in our day-to-day lives and how much I check off the boxes for all the things I'm doing for my kids, if I haven't sat with them and just like, how are you? What did you think about that thing we just read? And I could really understand them. That's my day's not complete. And so I'm so thankful for that understanding that I got so long ago because I feel like our days have been always based on there's a time when we heart to heart connect. And so even in the busy seasons, I feel like my kids know I love them. I'm there for them. I prioritize fixing good food. Sometimes it happens 4 days a week. Sometimes it's 2 days a week. It's in wrestling season right now, so nobody's really eating a lot. So that's nice. I sleep when I'm tired. I go to sleep. I try to be in bed by 9:30. My kids are welcome to come in and talk to me for a little bit, but I'm in bed and I sleep as long as I need to.
I'm sure I could if I had to, but I think sleep is an important part of being productive.
I can go on that 5 a.m. for a little while until I just crash and then I hate everybody. So it's not worth it to me. So I probably get 9 hours of sleep. We try to prioritize just good, wholesome food. I love lifting. Strength training has been a total game changer. I wish I would have found it earlier in my life, but it's a real estate story. I flipped a house. The people bought it, and he started a gym in his garage. And I went to him as my trainer, and I learned how much I'm capable of. I learned how good I feel strength training. And for the first time in a long time, since maybe I'd even been in college and just the super active that you are in college, after 8 kids, I felt like I owned my body. Like I could move it. It would do what I wanted it to do. I could get out of bed in the morning without feeling achy. So strength training, definitely water, sleep.
Yeah.
And then just, we talked about HRT.
Yeah. So I guess getting in charge of your health too, because what I've discovered, in addition to just figuring out the hormone situation, because at a certain age, you need to just take a look at that and figure out if that's right. But also, I think strength training got me into, I don't want to say the bodybuilding world, because I actually don't really like the sport of bodybuilding. I think it's dangerous. They take stuff in their bodies that are not natural, not healthy, but more like the natural, healthy fitness of bodybuilding, just really dialing in the nutrition. And even to a certain degree, the supplements. I was just diagnosed with a genetic metabolic disorder, which explains so much about the last 30 years of my life. And so I really had to dive down that rabbit hole, what the bodybuilders are doing to build more muscle and to keep themselves healthy, and the kind of crazy nutrition, and getting okay with the fact that I have to eat like a crazy person to be healthy, and
Protein.
and just getting on. I've never been a fan of supplements before, but getting a few that are really high value, creatine or the TMG, that kind of stuff. I have to take a methylated B vitamin, that kind of stuff, and then having some hormone to support that. And the reason why this is so important to dial in from a health perspective is because now I have time to actually spend rabbit holing on this stuff on board with my doctor or whatever. And it makes me better at all the things I want to do. It makes me a better mother, makes me a better partner, makes me a better business person because finally, I don't hate everybody. I'm not constantly wondering what's wrong with me. I don't feel so broken. Like you feel okay finally in your body that you're strength, you have strength and you're
Mhm.
powerful. All of that
And
extends
then you feel in your
mentally.
mind, right?
Yes, it makes your body better and your mind better. It's so important.
Yeah. So over the last 6 months, I've a progesterone and estrogen cream and a DHEA pill. I do prioritize vitamin B and vitamin D,
I take
and
the bees too.
yes,
Yes.
methylated bees, and then the beef organs,
Oh,
because I am an
yeah, I know.
iron, like a
I know
natural
about the
iron
beef part.
supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, we don't eat ground beef anymore. It's
Right.
all beef heart, and my kids don't know.
Yeah, just chop it up
They
and
can't
stick it
tell.
in there.
They can tell when there's liver in there, but they can't tell when there's heart in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
The liver's still just hard
that's gross.
to, yeah,
Maybe I should listen to my body if it's not disgusting. I shouldn't be
just
eating
get
it.
it in a good, like, capsule
Yeah,
form.
but heart's great.
But yeah, it just has helped just, you know what, for whatever reason, women's bodies, we just do this, and it just has made it like this and natural. And you just have a clear head.
Yeah.
You have a happier perspective.
The noise.
I have a good sense of humor.
Uh-huh.
I'm more likely to just laugh at something
Yes.
rather than lose it.
There's periods of time where I sat there and my kids would be sitting around talking or we're at dinner or we're watching a movie or something and everybody's chit-chatting, having fun. And I'm literally in the corner with my arms folded, just giving everybody the angry look. They go, why am I so angry all the time?
I always feel like as long as there's that part of me that can look at myself and be like, what's wrong with you? You're still in an okay place. Or sometimes I say to myself, if I wake up and I hate everybody and I hate myself and it's February,
Yeah.
it's probably going to be okay
Yeah.
because March is coming and we're going to get real vitamin D back again and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
we can only eat so many sardines during the winter time. Yeah, vitamin D was a big deal. We just started the midday sun exposure and feeling to give them real vitamin D and a lot of it.
yes.
I don't know. I don't know if the vitamin D itself or the sunshine itself or whatever it was, or just feeling like I was doing something that
It
was taking
heals
care of
you.
myself because you're out there meditating. It's 15 minutes, flip over 15 minutes, and you that whole time you're just meditating and getting some
Right.
grounding.
I know.
All the stuff.
So this is like a take from my real estate that just because of the contractors I know and now the project management I have. My mom, who lives here in Idaho, was just always getting sick every winter. And then my dad would take her to Arizona for a week, something, and she'd be fine.
Yes.
And so we punched a hole in her back garage wall and put it like floor to ceiling mirrors and heated tile floor. And she lives out there and she is doing so much better. And whenever I get a chance, just to go sit in there and feel that sun is so healing.
Okay, it's almost like a light sauna.
Mhm.
That's cool. I'm gonna one of these days have to go look at that. Good job bringing that back to real estate, bringing it home.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up.
Yep. I knew how to do that because of real estate.
There you go. Yeah, I find that it gives me the opportunity to have the time I need to focus on myself, so that then I can focus more on the real estate because or the business in general. It's just like they're self-supporting. You can't do one well unless the other ones, because you can take all the time you want and get all healthy you want, but if you can't afford your life, it comes with
Right.
problems too. But,
And you're stressed the other way.
yeah, but I don't ever want to be one of those people who goes over what do you call it? Drink the health Kool-Aid. The health influencers, the health gurus, and you're supposed to put this light on you and then take this supplement at that time to create the ice.
Then you're a
cube here.
slave to all these procedures that
Yeah.
I need simple.
And wealthy people per capita spend so much more on healthcare than middle class people because they get into all of these kind of half proven experimental influencer kind of stuff. And so I have to sometimes remind myself, this is time consuming, expensive, but you do kind of have to experiment and find what works and what doesn't work.
Move your body, eat well, sleep.
And take your HRT.
If you want to like your husband and your children
Yes.
and you're about my age, yeah, for sure, consider that.
Me and my husband, though, he's like, can men get in on this? And I'm like, I don't know. Go down your own YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah, figure that out. But yes, you can. There's something for you too.
Awesome. How do people get a hold of you, Stephanie? And I always ask everybody at the end of the show, what kind of person would you most like to have reach out to you as a result of hearing this show? Because that's how we met.
So I'm still interested in buying properties in the Eastern Idaho area, interested in partnering up multifamily, helping to manage those projects or consult on managing those projects. And then anybody who's interested in looking at, if I have a couple $1 million put aside, how can I make a really nice monthly income off of that.
Mhm.
And I can help you learn what we can do with that and get you set up with some hard money lending, understanding how that all works, and all the documents that you'll need to have to do that well.
Yeah. I think when people hear that, if you have a couple $1 million lying around, but honestly, people who have retirement accounts and people who have been preparing for this for a long time to retire decently, we need at least $1 million for a couple, looking at two-ish for inflation and all that. So you don't feel alarmed when you hear
Right, you
that's
like a
what we're looking
million,
for.
and I have a few people that I've helped with, like, between 300 to 500, and they're super happy with their monthly payments that they
Yeah.
get in.
I think the biggest difference between retiring on like the stock market and the 4% rule is on real estate. I feel like I can retire closer to like 10% rule.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's the same concept. It's like you have enough money, invest million, $2 million, somewhere around there, returning 10% rate of return, then I live on the 10% rule. And so it's not as difficult as you might think. It's just you're working hard, you're in your 50s, something like that. And you should already have some of this set aside. It's a different show for the 50-year-old who doesn't have that set aside. But for those of you who
Yeah, and if you don't have it set aside, we need to get working. Call me, and I'll be like, "Okay, let's start doing this."
work plan. So
Actually, email me, tharrisbuysproperties@gmail.
all right, awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
always enjoy like just
I know.
because sometimes we're talking about business, but then we'll be on the phone or something. We'll just start chit chatting. We don't talk often enough, but we have a lot of kids, so it's okay.
I know.
You're one of those friends that you just know I could call you anytime and pick up like right where we live.
Exactly. I'm a
Yeah.
super low maintenance friend. I need super low maintenance friends because it might be a year, and then I'd be like, "Hey, you wanna go
Yeah.
out for lunch?" And
Yeah.
I don't need to be like, "Oh, I thought you didn't like me anymore." "Oh, I love you."
Yes, low maintenance friends. That's a good way to look at it. I am a low maintenance friend and I need low maintenance friends.
Yep.
All right. If you would like to be my low maintenance friend, I'm happy to get in touch with you. Investwithemma.com or partnerwithrice.com if you want to talk to my partners. And we would love to just walk you through wherever you are. Just let me know. Either I can help you with the problem that you're having directly, or I know somebody who can help you because I interview a lot of people on the show. And I can make some introductions depending on what it is that you're looking for. So I appreciate you spending some time with me. I mean it. Like, reach out after the show. Let's talk. I want to hear about your next passive income adventure and hopefully have a hand in helping you plan it out and pay for it. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma.
All right.
All right.